Welcome to another video by Enterprises Software Solutions, your #1 software dudes. My name is Anthony, and in this video, we're going to run through installing the Veeam backup for Office 365. So I've already got everything downloaded here. That includes the actual backup software as well as the explorers for both Exchange and SharePoint. So let's go ahead and get them installed. And the installers are really simple, so we don't need to actually walk through any of this, but I'm just going to click through them and the explorers allow you to actually look at the local data. So we're going to go ahead and get them both installed. There we go. And once they're installed, you'll notice we now have a Veeam icon on the desktop. Let's go ahead and launch that. And when it first launches, you notice we have this option for a server to connect to. That's the local server we're on since we installed it on the server that we're running this on. I'm going to hit connect and expand this out. So the first thing we need to do is to add an organization. So I'm going to select the add org option. And since I'm going to be backing up my Office 365 tenant, and if we click this drop down, I'm not a hybrid or on-prem. I am cloud only, so we'll leave it selected as Microsoft Office 365. Hit next. And we'll leave the region as default and modern authentication since I've got everything set up for that. And here, if you've got an Azure AD application already set up for this, you can use that. And if we select this option, you notice here where it's got a username, an ID, and a certificate. We don't have that information, so we'll let the wizard configure it for us. This is really easy. We first just need to give it a name. And then for the certificate, we can either have one on hand ready to use, or we can let it generate one for us, which is fine. And if you have customized content in SharePoint, this is where you want to select this option to allow it to enable export mode. I don't, so I'm going to hit next. And this is where we have the option to authenticate with Microsoft's device login prompt. So I'm going to select the option to copy code and bring that up. And here's what the device login looks like with Microsoft. So we're just going to go ahead and paste that code that we got from Veeam. Hit next. And if you're already signed in, like I am, we have this option to go ahead and select our account. And that's all there is, assuming you have the right permissions. In this case, it'll take a global administrator to set this up. So I'm going to close the window. If we go back to Veeam, you'll notice that we have this green check mark. You are authenticated to Office 365 as Anthony. So we'll go ahead and hit next. And this is where it's got to run through just some setup for Office 365. We'll let it run. And once that's complete, we'll go ahead and hit finish here. And you'll see we now have an organization under our organizations header on the left. And so if we select our organization now, we have the option to create a backup. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll give it a name. Hit next. And if you want to back up everyone and everything, select backup the entire organization. We'll have an option to select exceptions if you need to. But for this case, I'm just going to back up a test user that I created by clicking add. So I'm going to select my Bradley test user, click add. I'm going to go ahead and click on next. And if we had selected a larger scope, like maybe a group or the organization, we could exclude certain users, certain SharePoint sites, that sort of thing, by clicking add here. And you see we have the option to exclude groups, users, and sites. But I'm just backing up one user. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next. And here's where you can select the proxy and repository. And if you have a more complex Veeam topology, this is where you would select that option. I do not. Mine's very simple for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next. And here, I'll select the start a job when I click create option. And I'm going to leave the default, well, except, but 3 p.m. is pretty terrible time since I have people working then. So I'm going to select 8 p.m. in case we end up chewing up some bandwidth. Click on create. There, it's running. So if we go ahead and select this, we can see down below, we've got the action pane where we can see what's happening. And one of the nice things about Veeam, at least that I like, is we have this really nice status pane that tells us what's going on, the data that's coming down, a summary, and even the status. So my favorite part of the status here is it tells us what the bottleneck is. So if you have a really slow internet connection, or maybe some slow disk, it'll tell you the target is slow. So in this case, my internet connection might be might be being throttled, or maybe the disk is giving it some issues. Not sure. But typically what I'll see here for the bottleneck is the source is the bottleneck. So that's going to be Office 365. But we'll give this a couple minutes to finish up. Oh, there you can see it swapped over to source there for a second and back to target. All right, sweet. So it went in and completed. We can see down below that it only transferred 14 megabytes. So this user is obviously not a very prolific user. My test user, remember? So now if we want to actually look and see what we backed up, this is one of the beauties of using a product like Veeam Backup, is that we can select this option to explore. And remember, we installed the Explorer for Exchange and for OneDrive. And so if we select the Explorer latest Exchange state, once this loads, we can actually see the inbox that we backed up. So again, we'll select our organization, we'll select our test user, we'll expand this out, and whoa, we can look and we can actually see the items in the user's inbox. So if I select the inbox, you can see that I've actually emailed this user. You can see subject test over there on the right. And this, like I mentioned earlier, this is one of the big advantages from using just the built-in recycle bin, because there's no way in Exchange Online for an administrator to go in and pull individual emails. So for instance, if I needed to restore just this one message, it's a simple matter for me of right-clicking on it, selecting the option to restore to my Bradley test account, or I can restore it to another mailbox, I can export it, I can send it, I can even compare it to what's in the mailbox already. Like, this is one of the beauties of using a backup solution like this. And so I'll go ahead and close out of this. So also, if we want to look at OneDrive for this user, it's going to be very similar to Exchange. My test user just doesn't have any data in their OneDrive account, so there's nothing for us to see here in this case. As you can see, Veeam is a great product when it comes to dealing with Office 365, especially compared to the built-in recycle bin, because there's a lot of features here that you don't get with any of the built-in features in Office 365, as you saw in this video. So again, remember, Enterprises Software Solutions is your #1 software dudes. Thank you so much for watching.